for dinner? Today I'm going to show you how to make a homemade pasta using the basic ingredients that you might have in your kitchen. So we're going to start with the flour. I like to use some 00 flour and some semolina flour. We found that it makes the best pasta. So first thing, I'm going to measure my ingredients. I'm going to do 120 grams of 00 flour. So 120, then I'm going to measure the semolina flour. It also gives a beautiful color to your pasta as well. And I'm going to do 80 grams of semolina. Looks like that might be all that I have. It's actually excellent to use when you work with pasta because it doesn't stick. Helps you prevent from sticking. Next thing, we're going to sift our flour through the fine mesh strainer, and that is so that the dough is more elastic and consistent, so you don't have any clumps in there. So what we're going to do is, and also we'll mix those two flours together. Just sift that through. So a lot of times the flour will get clumpy and from moisture in the air sometimes, so you don't want that in your flour. The next step, what we're going to do is we're going to add some salt. That is not a necessary step. You can skip that if you don't like your pasta a little bit flavored. We do, so we put a little bit of salt. So that would be our next step. And then we put eggs in and we'll mix the dough after that. Let's add some salt. I usually add about 2 pinches of salt. And then mix the salt with the flour. Next step, you're going to do a little well in the middle. So that's where we're going to put our 2 eggs. So you're going to crack 2 eggs in the middle. We use our homegrown eggs. You can use store-bought 2 eggs, roughly about medium to large size. And I use a spoon. I usually start with a spoon, and I'm going to start to mix the eggs. So I'm going to break the egg yolk, mix the egg first together just a little bit, so you have kind of a unified texture. And then you're going to add some flour as you go around. You're going to mix all of that flour into the egg, and that's going to make a beautiful pasta dough. I like to start with a spoon because this way I don't have to get my hands all gooey first. So once we'll have a rough dough, then I'm going to use my hand and I'm going to finish the dough by hand, and then I'm going to let it sit at the room temperature. I usually put it in a Ziploc bag and let it sit and rest for about 30 minutes. And in the beginning, the dough will look really wet. That's normal, so just keep working, keep adding more flour. This way you can also control how much flour you need. So if you see that the dough is ready, then you don't need to mix all of the flour. It depends on the size of your eggs. Sometimes eggs could be smaller. So it looks like we're getting pretty close to switch to just working by your hand, but I still see some wetness, so it's still wet. Okay, I'm going to clean that spoon. You don't want to lose that egg. And now I'm going to start working by hand. and you're kind of kneading the dough towards you usually, this is the best way to do that. And as I go around, just add more flour as you work your dough. And once you have the dough done, then you're going to put it on the surface and maybe work for a few minutes on the clean surface. But the dough shouldn't be really wet. It might be still a little bit of, it might be a little bit sticky, but not necessarily really wet. So if it's some of that gets to your hand, that's okay. But looks like I still need to add some more flour. Now we're going to take our dough, put it on the surface, a clean surface, and just kind of work it for a minute or two. Just make it and shape it into a bowl. It doesn't have to be perfect, like I said earlier, because we're going to let the dough rest and the dough will take its final shape. But you can see that the dough is not too sticky. It still looks kind of rough, but that's okay. So shape it into a ball. Okay, place it in a bag, a Ziploc bag, or wrap it with the Saran wrap and let it sit on the countertop at the room temperature for about 30 minutes, and then we'll come back and then we'll shape our pasta. Now our dough rested for 30 minutes. So the next step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the dough and just work it for a minute to make it shape into a nice ball. Then I'm going to flatten it into, and if it's a little sticky, you can always apply a little bit of flour. I like to use semolina flour on both sides. So kind of flatten it with your hands, because we're going to put it through the pasta machine. So you want to kind of shape it into a rectangle. And on setting 0, we're going to run it through the machine several times. And the dough is going to look really well. So I'm going to just flip it over, like fold it in 3s, and then turn it 90 degrees and roll it through the dough machine again. You can see that the dough is getting more elastic. If you feel like you need a little bit of more flour, you can apply some of this flour. Fold it in 3s again. Roll it through. One more time. I'm going to sprinkle some flour. And if it's a little bit of wet, just keep adding flour so it doesn't stick. You're still going to be ending up with the beautiful pasta. Roll it through again. And once the dough looks like it has a good consistency, you're ready to switch to, you can see that it's not sticky and it looks really well. So I'm going to run through settings 1. And now I'm not going to fold it, I'm just going to run it through the machine. Then I'm going to settings number 2, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to run it through the pasta machine. And because we use semolina flour, you can see that the pasta already looks beautiful. It has this nice yellow color to it. I'm going to go to next settings number 3, and also starting 3, we're going to flatten the dough and make it thinner and you can make it up to the thickness of that you like. I usually go up to 6, and then I usually shape the pasta after that. And you'll see that the dough is going to get longer and longer. Just fold it in half. Go to next settings. And if you feel like, again, you can help it with your hands a little bit, or put a little bit more flour in it. And switching to 5 now, and in between.
Mommy.
Flour it lightly so it doesn't stick. Go to 5, so I have 2 more settings to go through. And today we're going to be making some pasta and steak for dinner. So you can see how long the dough gets. I like to cut it in half so it's easier to serve, but you can keep it long if you like. It's all up to your personal taste. And here's number 6, so my last, and you can always fill the dough. So if it gets thinner, you can stop, or you can go all the way if you want to make like very fine pasta like angel hair. Make sure you flatten your dough before so it doesn't stick, and apply some flour if you like. So my next step is, before I run it through to make a shape, I'm going to put some flour on it on both sides because I don't want, this is the final shape, I don't want it to stick. Like I ran out of space on my working bench today. So I'm going to flip the dough over. I'm going to use actually scissors since that, and we can flatten that later and make another batch of pasta out of it. And here's our final shape, and we're making fettuccine today. I'm going to switch to the attachment, and we're going through, and we're going to make our pasta now. So because it's a long piece, I'm going to fold it in half first. And I'm going through the pasta machine. I usually do a little bit through and then I kind of pull the pasta so it doesn't stick. Go about halfway through. Okay, hold the pasta with my hand, keep rolling. Move my hand a little bit. Yeah. Making pasta. And you have your beautiful pasta. So what I like to do is to cut my pasta in half because, like I said earlier, it gets too long. I put some flour on each of the servings, and then I usually use just the wooden spoon and I put it on and I let it air dry, or if you're serving it right away, you can just cook it right away, or if you let it air dry, it'll be perfect for a few hours until you're ready to serve it. Till you're ready to cook it and then serve it. And here you go. This is how we make pasta. Very easy to do, and you can do it in 30 minutes plus 10-15 minutes for mixing and shaping.